I made up this title. I'm going to talk about genetic engineering. I'm going to talk about GMOs. I'm going to talk about that sort of thing. And I'm going to tell you why I'm here. These are nematodes, microscopic worms in the ground. I studied nematodes for 30 years. And 45 years ago, when I was in graduate school, I learned that there's nematodes in the ground and they're really not that great because they attack our crops. And so we have to kill them. We have to sterilize the soil. And that's what I did in graduate school. I was a soil biologist, a nematologist. And then mid-career, I learned molecular biology. I became a genetic engineer, still working with these little guys. And I retired 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And in the last few years, because I'm a scientist, I still read a bit. And I realized there's something wrong with GMOs, with genetic engineering technology. I mean, I read everywhere that it's wonderful, and that's what I said during my career. I was, speaking up for GMOs, for genetic engineering. There is absolutely no way taking a gene from a bacteria and putting it in a plant should result in any kind of toxicity. And yet the rats, lots of experiments with mice and rats show that they're getting sick. So I try to think about what could it be, because really very few scientists speak up, because everybody has a family and a mortgage, you can't speak up. I'm retired, I can't be fired. So 3 years ago, when I started speaking publicly, I put up together a story where basically the only thing that I could imagine was that if you put a bacterial gene in DNA using the technology that we have, and we basically shoot that gene, the gene construct, into the genome, there might be some collateral damage, there might be some proteins that are changed. DNA cannot be toxic, but proteins can be toxic for sure. And I wasn't very happy with my story. And it's only less than 2 years ago that I realized it has nothing to do with the genetic engineering technology. It probably, highly probably has everything to do with a pesticide. So I'm going to tell you a pesticide story wrapped around genetic engineering. The point is that probably all of you are interested, intrigued, curious about this issue, this GMO debate. You've read about it. I mean, everybody does. Everybody has read about the debate. There's some people who say, like he did, that it's perfectly fine, and other people think it's like it's frankenfood. It's terrible. It's horrible. So I'm going to give you a little bit more detail. There is a very intense debate. And this is, I just saw this 2 or 3 days ago. This basically, perfectly, it's on YouTube. It's the new debate, the 2015 Arthur Rupie debate, where pro-GMO people ask other pro-GMO people polite questions about GMOs and get polite answers, and that's the debate. So I'm going to go a little beyond that, beyond the scene, so to speak. This is the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. Okay, there's a few. Medicine. Okay, there's a few hundred, possibly a few thousand medical doctors. They're not stupid. They can read the literature. And 6 years ago, as a society, they decided to take a stand and they issued this statement based on independent studies. This is 6 years ago already, showing infertility, immune dysregulation, accelerated aging, dysregulation of genes associated with cholesterol synthesis, insulin regulation, cell signaling and protein synthesis, and changes in the liver, the kidney, the spleen, and gastrointestinal tract. And they requested, demanded, suggested a moratorium on engineered food, and as you know, of course, nothing happened. So that's two sides of the debate. On one side, you have some academics and a whole lot of people who will sing the praise of the technology. There's absolutely nothing to fear. And on the other hand, you can find some statement like the one I just showed you. So, I'm going to I don't really have much to say about industrial agriculture per se, other than my whole intervention today. And if you have questions at the end, I'm sure there is time for that. Examples of genetically, this is from the net, somewhere that I found this. Examples of genetically modified food crops include resistance to certain pests, diseases, or environmental conditions, reduction of spoilage, resistance to chemical treatments, like resistance to a herbicide, or improving the nutrient profile of the crop. This is from Wikipedia. Well, I mean, that sounds all very logical and hopeful, and I have absolutely no reservation to say, to approve of this statement. This is exactly what genetically modified food crops include. What this statement doesn't tell you is that over 90% of all engineered plants on the planet today, all engineered crops, all engineered food crops, are of one kind, Roundup Ready. They have been engineered to be resistant to the herbicide Roundup. Over 90%. That doesn't leave a lot of room for everything else. And most of everything else really is on the shelf. It is not commercialized yet. It hasn't seen the day of light. It works in the lab, or perhaps in plots. The other technology is the BT technology, is resistance to certain pests. It's a particular kind of technology which is quite successful, where basically a toxic protein is engineered, bacterial protein is engineered into the plant, corn and cotton mostly. And when the insects, the caterpillars come and feed on the plant, they die. But that is a very small technology compared to the Roundup Ready technology. 10 to 15% of all engineered crops, corn and cotton, are engineered with the BT technology, and of course they are also engineered to be Roundup Ready, because this is number one by far. The active ingredient of the herbicide, a pesticide has an active ingredient that does the job, and then it has all kinds of other molecules and chemicals to help it do the job. The active ingredient of Roundup, the herbicide Roundup, is called glyphosate. Glyphosate. You're going to hear that word 100 times tonight. And I made this little pun for GMOs, so you can remember it. GMOs are basically almost all glyphosate modified organisms. They have been modified with a bacterial gene that confers a resistance to the herbicide, to the active ingredient glyphosate.